It started with the sound of a helicopter echoing across the valley. I was standing on my porch when I noticed the rescue chopper trying to descend toward my property. To my disbelief, a group of HOA officers had formed a human barricade in the adjacent lot, waving their arms and attempting to block the landing. They hadn't realized the pilot was my own sibling, a SWAT officer, who dipped the nose of the aircraft in defiance, forcing the HOA crowd to scatter like startled pigeons. Their hostility didn't stop there. Later that week, a woman the locals nicknamed HOA Karen stormed up to my gate and barked, "You need to relocate immediately." She believed I had no right to remain here, but I told her calmly, "I'm not budging from your community, because it isn't even your community." Her face soured at the realization that I had more authority here than she ever would. Her obsession grew dangerous. One afternoon, as I walked near the pond, she dialed emergency services claiming I was trespassing. Police arrived, but when they learned my identity, landowner, licensed officer, and longtime resident, they were stunned and embarrassed at being summoned for nothing. She didn't apologize. Instead, she pushed the HOA council to demolish one of my leased properties while I was away. But to her horror, beneath the rubble, investigators uncovered a safeguarded archaeological landmark. The HOA had unwittingly destroyed federal property, and their nightmare was only beginning. Her son was next in the spotlight. After a late-night joyride on his motorcycle, he crashed into my fence. When I confronted him, Karen insisted, "My child is blameless." But my security cameras had already captured the evidence, and even my motorcycle's sensors had recorded the collision. She shrieked, demanding justice, but the truth was undeniable. Her attempts grew more unhinged. One night she banged on my door shouting, "Open the door or I'll fire, you fool." She hadn't realized my guard dogs were inside. Their growls silenced her threats quicker than any bullet ever could. Another day, she even filed a lawsuit over a non-existent pet cat, demanding fines for animals I didn't own. When officers asked to see the cat, her lies collapsed. The HOA escalated further by trespassing onto my remote property, insisting I follow their regulations. But I was not, and never had been, a member. They called the police to shut down my grill spot, warning of potential violence. I took legal action instead and won, humiliating them in court. They even tried to dictate rules on my century-old farm, unaware I held the mortgage to their very financial institution. Overnight, their leverage disintegrated. When I purchased new grounds, the HOA rushed in, acting as if they owned it, not realizing I already controlled their headquarters. They dispatched guards to intimidate me at my waterfront farm, but my tactical unit mobilized and sent them scattering. Karen dialed emergency again, this time to expel a visitor, unaware that her target was a legislator. Her arrogance peaked when she sprayed my spouse with pepper spray at our farm headquarters. This time, her actions carried criminal charges. She even went so far as to sell my pondside lodge behind my back, despite my clear non-membership. She chose the wrong adversary. I reversed the sale, exposed her fraud, and filed suit. Later, she tried to coerce me into selling terrain for her waterfront project. My refusal and my legal genius shattered her plans. Her tactics turned violent. Fake officers were sent to assault my sibling at our pond lodge, but they didn't know he was an active lawmaker. The HOA then razed another of my residences, punishing me for declining membership. In response, I disbanded their entire association and alerted state authorities. Still, they didn't quit. They barricaded my path, claiming ownership of my pond, but when they refused to negotiate, I imposed a $3 million penalty against them. Their desperation peaked when the HOA leader hosted a 200-person gathering at my lodge, only to panic when their provisions mysteriously vanished. My drones had documented everything. Later, heavy machinery flattened another one of my homes, but this time, my surveillance drones transmitted the entire demolition directly to law enforcement. The HOA couldn't deny it. Their rules grew absurd. They tried forbidding outdoor activity past 6 p.m. When I stepped outside at dusk, their guards attacked. I retaliated swiftly and summoned police. Then they dispatched a team to discard my belongings from the farm, but drones revealed their entire scheme. They even tried detaining my crew, until I unveiled hidden recordings exposing their crimes. Karen, meanwhile, was reckless. She destroyed my barrier, calling it obstructive, which allowed wild pigs to storm into her own fields and wreak havoc. Later, she summoned police to pressure my spouse into selling terrain, only to falter when she discovered my spouse's status as a federal official. When Karen flaunted her sports car down my kin's path, I simply arranged a rock obstacle to end her parade. Their harassment extended to my grandfather. Karen called the police to penalize him for skipping membership, only to faint when she learned his credentials outranked theirs. She sent henchmen to ruin my grill event, but they were restrained and escorted away in disgrace. She billed me for fees I didn't owe, but my credentials silenced her nonsense instantly. When my TechSmart child altered the HOA's network, Karen's hidden information leaked, further exposing her corruption. Her obsession drove her to dial emergency each time my kin returned early to the lodge. She even stormed onto my remote grounds, only to freeze when armed officers surrounded her. The HOA tried billing me $70,000 for selling a lodge outside their jurisdiction, but the judge instead sentenced them to 20 years for fraud. Karen once called police upon spotting my grandfather at our century-old residence, unaware he was the responding officer. Another time, she attempted to force me to sell terrain by pointing out my tattoos, only to recognize them as law enforcement insignia. When she illegally constructed her headquarters on my grounds, tactical forces sealed all exits. When she mocked my tall trees, a storm rolled in, and those very trees shielded her home from destruction. Her calls grew more reckless. She dialed emergency during one of my family grill events, even firing shots in panic, only for national security to descend. Another time, she tried to summon police to enforce membership on my spouse and grandfather, only to discover my grandfather was a high-ranking officer. She even halted the shipment of my father's medication, until federal agents stormed the HOA office. In the end, she attempted to expel my kin from our lodge, but I assumed control of the HOA council itself. She dispatched phony officers to disrupt my events, only for federal agents to neutralize them instantly. Her last act of violence came when she rammed a medical vehicle carrying my grandfather. My tactical squad countered swiftly. When she called police during a penalty dispute, my spouse revealed her government credentials, silencing Karen for good. Her final outburst involved summoning emergency services and assaulting both me and my companion. That was the moment I directed tactical forces to incarcerate the entire council. When the HOA dispatched officers who assaulted my spouse at our farm, I leveled their community permanently. And when Karen tried to enforce her regulations on my kin, she didn't realize the ultimate truth. My entire family were attorneys, every last one of us. The HOA never recovered.